provided by partner organizations of water.org. Listen to their stories.
Yung aming pong sitwasyon noon, nung wala pa po kaming water connection, mahirap po, masakit sa balikat kasi po medyo malayo nga po yung igiban namin. Tulad niyan po may bakod. Medyo minsan po, hindi masyadong malinis yung tubig. Pag umuulan, marumi. Kaya kung minsan po, nagkakasakit yung mga anak ko dahil sa dumi ng tubig.
Noon po ay kami nakikikadlo lang po doon po sa kabilang kanto. Ang laki ng aming binabayaran. 700 mahigit. Ay sa ngayon, ay sawa na sa tubig, nagbabayad po ako ng mura. Ang aming bill ngayon ay nasa 200 plus lang po isang buwan, kaysa kami nagbabayad doon ng mahal. Tapos ay anong bilis kong maglinis ng kubeta ko, hindi katulad nung inaamag-amag tala sa hirap ng tubig. Ngayon po maganda na talaga.
Among Sir Formero Balay di unipa iniliplit. Daso na matamat kot-kot naman. Pag kot-kot sa CR, pagbuta, awason ko naman na kang ikuha naman liwat.
Hindi malimpyo.
Hindi gidya si Ray, hindi gidya komportable ang amon pang kwanto ya. Kay ko gidya. Kabataan ko yung dang, kadagko na, mga dlaga ba, mga sultiro. Kabudlay, kagay kami gani sir, ka pamuson sa plastic, kagyaboy das kampo. Ang binipisyuhan kay sir, kaya kabataan, safety na sila makapaligo, daway na sa may malili sila na. Mang limpyo, palibot niyo.
Sa una, sa wala pa may CR, mudagan may tungas kilometro ato sa akong mama. Perting paitaw, mag-LBE mi, kay wala dyan may kasiaran. Ang akong anak, palibangon in taon na ho, anaras, yuta, ang kubkubon, kaya pa man may CR. Gamay pamampod, pampod, kuan, uwaw, ilibang ang zuta. Ilubong na namog siguro, kay di man po pwede ilabay, ka manimaho man sa silinganan. Karon, hayahay na kayo mi, kay naka-CR na mi, bisang mag-LBE mo gabi or adlaw, di na mi mudagan in taos, tungas kilometro. Kay niya naman may CR, nga nahuman na. Sir. Nang gabi ako nang buntag sayo, mata ko sayo, kay magkaos. Kaya namin ako eskwela. Yes, mga labada, doon labuhonon dito, atos tabay, ya, lukdog, ray, bugata. Sakit na yung linhig, pinasag tubig. Hayahay na dyan, sir, kay kanang mga bata maligo. Ni aram, maligo na sila, kuan na kay sa una, maglitlit sa eskwela, kay matong palagig tabay, ya, dugay mga mata. Karon, na ano dako so kausbanan kay pag ako di nako kapudso nandiyan na ako'y baboy arag tubig doon nya ako an po man laban arab sagasag sa rasa laba ko indot na jud og kuan ay nga na ako'y tubig nga di namin sige palit og mineral di na kay mikas bag kwarta nga sige palit kay tag 45 ya di rin nya karon nga ni mahal na tag 15 na kay 5,000 pa man mi. Gadali raman po noon kay na may ulan niya among iputang sa Maltabana mukuha lami para pambubulan dito sa among 48. Pinagi ra sa ulan niya among magamit niya bisag sa talibon puro lahi maglasa bisag giganahan pod mi anang inaana nga naabot diri sa amoa.
Good morning! Welcome to the forum entitled Effecting Positive Change Through Inclusion and Focus on Critical Sustainable Development Goals. This event is presented by the Phoenix Financial Inclusion Committee in partnership with water.org. Before we start, may we invite everybody to a prayer to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem. Heavenly Father, you are our Creator, our light, our wisdom and strength. May we ask for your guiding hand to lead us through this forum today and every day as we accomplish our work and various tasks. We pray for joy, enthusiasm, and fulfillment in our work. May we conduct ourselves and our business dealings in an environment of fairness, respect, and compassion. May we ask you to enter the hearts and minds of our leaders and countrymen. Give them strength, wisdom, so that they may lead us through these difficult times with honesty, integrity, humility, and selflessness. Finally, we pray that you extend your healing hand over us, our families, and our nation, and help us overcome this health crisis that has claimed so many lives, including the lives of many of our friends, family members, and colleagues. Please heal those who are sick and guide the hands and minds of our doctors and nurses as they care for them. All these we humbly pray. Amen.
Good morning. I'm Joey Camus, Phoenix Inclusion Committee Vice Chair and Lead Consultant for the Infrastructure Projects and Finance of the OLI Consulting Group. This forum is offered free via Zoom, and we simultaneously broadcast live on Phoenix official Facebook page and YouTube channels. Now, participants whom may wish to donate for the forum may send their donations in any amount for the victims of Typhoon Rai or Odette, and the Phoenix Foundation account details are being flashed on your screens and will be in the chat box for the duration of the event. So to formally open this event, may I call on our Phoenix President, Michael Arcatomi Guarin, for his message. Mike?
Morning, Joey. Thank you very much. Hopefully, I'm coming in clearly enough. So, again, good morning, everyone. What a great topic to start our Thursday morning. And again, it is worth repeating. Affecting positive change through inclusion and focus on critical sustainable goals. To all of the attendees joining us this morning, welcome. So we have all been hearing a lot about measures and initiatives being undertaken by the government, the BSP, financial institutions, and fintech companies to try to reach the unbanked and those that appear to be more financially challenged, either due to their living circumstances or just general positions in the economy. Institutions now are fully cognizant of the need to run themselves as responsible businesses, treating customers, employees, suppliers, and other stakeholders as fairly as possible and catering for a wide diversity of needs. There is a clear recognition that it is unacceptable for a business or for an entity to run just for profit without purpose. No organization can truly thrive if the communities and businesses around them are failing. So I'd like to think that here in Phoenix, we're trying to do our part in trying to uplift everyone else within the community and in the business organization. And there's no doubt about it. We are not merely facing a sustainability or inclusivity problem, but we are facing what appears to be a growing sustainability and inclusivity problem. And I'm not just talking about the Philippines. let's be clear about it. This is a global problem. But for this morning, I'd like to think that as Filipinos or those that are operating in the Philippines, we are able to discuss the topic in a very rich manner. The issue of inequality and exclusivity is by no means confined to low income or even low to middle income countries. In high income countries such as the UK, the gulf is likewise pronounced. And I encourage all the participants to further read up on it. I merely mention this because we are not alone. This is not a purely Asian phenomenon, but it is rather a global one. And maybe some of the solutions can come from somewhere out there and not in the Philippines. And then, just reflecting on it, since exclusivity and problems regarding sustainability was a problem, how about adding COVID-19 into the mix? How it raised the stakes on the issues we are facing. These issues are pervasive and long-standing, and we now need to face that fact that through COVID-19, they have been made worse. Not just financially, but also from a health perspective. Pretty obvious. So it is in some senses a cruel irony that the sectors that employ the greatest number of low-paid workers have been hit the hardest by the pandemic. So hopefully there would still be solutions that will address that particular portion of our economy and of our sector. One of the features of the pandemic that many people will remember for years to come has been the lockdown experience. Working from home for extended periods, participating in all those Teams and Zoom calls, collaborating on shared platforms. But again, we need to put it in perspective. These are privileged professionals' perspective, right? Rich kid problems, so to speak. But for many millions, lockdown has meant an inability to work, plain and simple. For some, without having access to devices, or even those who have devices, lack of connectivity, it has also meant an inability to work, to look for other opportunities, or to upskill in order to find a new career. So, without further delay, in today's webinar, we hope to hear about solutions. Or if not solutions, ideas that will inspire us to think about solutions that are intended to bridge the so-called divide between those who have it and those who don't. It's up to us to fill in that blank, those who have it financially, economically, or even from a health perspective. So because of this, again, I really would like to show my appreciation and thank all of our keynote speaker. Thank you, ma'am. Our moderators and our panelists. We truly appreciate your time this morning. And of course, thank you to our Financial Inclusion Committee, led by its ever-dependable chairwoman, Gay. Thank you very much, Gay. And Vice Chair, obviously our idol, Mr. Joey Camus, and our MC today. Thank you, Joey. And of course, we cannot see the participation likewise by our liaison director, Ms. Flor Tariela. Thank you for being the beacon of Phoenix when it comes to financial inclusivity, sustainability. So I'd like to give the virtual floor back to our MC. Maraming salamat and mabuhay ang Phoenix.
Thank you, President Mike. This forum brings together experts in the region who will discuss climate change, importance of water and shelter to recovery, resilience, and sustainability. NEDA is joining to speak on the Philippine economic policy with a focus on climate change resilience. Speaking of NEDA, allow me to introduce our keynote speaker, NEDA Economic and Development Authority Undersecretary for the Regional Development Group, Ms. Mercedita A. Sombilla. USEC Sombilla heads the regional development focused on agricultural development policy analysis, including environment and natural resources management, and resilience to climate change and other natural resources. She advocates sustainable and resilient development of rural economy, rural household incomes, and welfare improvement, climate change adaptation enhancement. Yusek Sombilia holds a doctorate degree in agricultural and applied economics from the University of Minnesota and a master's in economics degree from the University of the Philippines. Let's warmly welcome Yusek Sombilia to deliver her message.
Thank you, Joey. May I request my assistant to share the slides? Thank you. Members of the Financial Executive Institute of the Philippines, headed by President Guarin, distinguished panelists of this forum, participants, a pleasant day to all. It is really a delight, and I would like to thank the Financial Executive Institute of the Philippines for inviting NEDA to this important event. This forum is an opportune time to share the government's strategic direction in strengthening resilience to climate change impacts, which are being considered as we plan and implement interventions to recover from the pandemic and the transition to a greener economy. The Philippine economy grew by 7.7% in the fourth quarter of 2021. This resulted to a 5.6% full-year growth, surpassing the growth target for the year of 5 to 5.5%. This growth clearly indicates that we can indeed remain on track to our goal of a healthy and resilient Philippines as we recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and the havoc caused by Typhoon Odette last December. With our accelerated vaccination program, strict compliance with minimum health protocols, and close observance of the 3 Cs, confined spaces with poor ventilation, crowded places with no physical distancing, and close contact settings with face-to-face interaction, we now are in better situation to manage the risk posed by this ongoing pandemic and possibly future ones of the same nature that may come by. This health pandemic is just one of the challenges that we face. There are others, and we need to be better poised to handle, particularly the impact of natural calamities and disasters, if we are to ensure the achievement of the 7% to 9% economic growth rate that we targeted to be able to move closer to our goal of being part of the upper middle income economies. Indeed, as we reopen the economy, and as we get back on the road to economic recovery, we must not forget that climate crisis continues to loom. The Philippines is notably among the countries extremely vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. The country's data on loss and damage reveal our extreme vulnerability to climate change. In fact, around 98% of the total damage incurred by the government is due to climate-related hazards. From 2010 to 2020, we experienced strong typhoons affecting more than 38 million people and causing over 262 billion pesos of damage to assets and properties. In 2020 alone, the overall damage caused by several typhoons in agriculture and infrastructure amounted to 44.2 billion pesos. Typhoon Odette last year cost around 33 billion pesos. Damage to agriculture and infrastructure with more than 1 million damaged houses across regions. In years when we may not have the big typhoons and heavy rains and floods, we suffer other extreme events like El Nino and drought that have occurred more frequent and have caused greater damages. Wide significance of such events happened in 2010, 2014 to 2016, and 2019, causing cumulative dent to the economy in the tune of about 59 billion pesos. If we continue to do business as usual, the climate outlook in the decades to come predicts more devastating climate-related risks that may jeopardize our capacity to sustain our economic recovery and development, negate the gains and derail the country from getting closer to the 2040 long-term vision. Hence, there is an urgency to double our efforts to put in place measures to prepare the country from this climate change impacts and ensure resilience, primarily to strengthen the more vulnerable communities and their livelihoods, including the micro, small, and medium enterprises. We need more effective and efficient climate proofing to ensure better risk management for business continuity. With this, I would like to share 3 key points on how we can do better climate proofing with the genuine partnership of the business sector. The first is investing in climate smart solutions that contribute to regional development. In the pursuit of sustainable development and climate resilience, we need to scale up our investments in climate change adaptation and mitigation measures. The government has continuously been putting in place the right policies and programs to ensure preparedness and adaptability, especially among the vulnerable countries, especially the vulnerable communities to extreme climate aberrations and disasters. Companies, on the other hand, should and can complement government efforts by investing in various climate smart solutions or green technologies that will contribute to lower GHG emissions. To support lower carbon emission, businesses can venture on renewable energy development, especially in islands and remote regions without access to a steady supply of power. Mini grids powered by solar and wind are viable sources of energy that do not only support agricultural economic activities, example, value-adding agricultural products like abaca processing, coconut grading, and similar others in these off-grid areas, but also drive the mitigation and adaptation co-benefits of investments. Investment to mainstream climate lens by shifting to more sustainable and green technologies and entrepreneurship will strengthen the adaptive capacity of the agriculture sector in particular and its value chain. Along this climate lens, mainstreaming should be the need to retool workforce on climate smart practices. My second point is scaling up sustainable finance and ensuring financial inclusion. In encouraging the business sector to shift to green investments, we call the financial institutions to be partner of government in scaling up sustainable finance in the country. In recent years, the government has already issued several guidelines and frameworks to guide the private sector in mobilizing more funds to promote green, climate smart, and sustainable solutions. This includes the Sustainable Finance Framework for the banking sector, issued by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, sustainability reporting guidelines for publicly listed companies, released by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Sustainable Finance Roadmap and guiding principles developed by the BSP and the Department of Finance together with other agencies, including NEDA. We planted the seeds. It is high time to reap the gains. With the right policies and frameworks in place, the outlook for sustainable finance will continue to increase despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Such mechanisms would attract and orient capital towards sustainable investments and further unlock potential sources of finance for robust and sustainable financing. We also need to ensure that no one will be left behind when we reach our SDG targets. Financial institutions should tailor the services they provide based on the needs of the vulnerable individuals and families to improve their access to funds for emergency purposes. Financial products that would encourage construction of green buildings or support small solar home systems are being encouraged among banking institutions. Mobilizing blended finance is the most practical move to make at this point of climate crisis. Third point is ensuring environmental sustainability. Most businesses rely upon our natural capital for their operations. But in the course of this reliance, the quality of services provided by our natural capital gets affected. Over the past decades, there have been environmentally harmful industries in supply chains that worsen pollution and greenhouse gas emissions due to the utilization of dirty and extractive technologies and practices. If such practices are left uncontrolled, polluted environment eventually will affect business productivity and efficiency. Polluted environment endangers the health of workers and employees, which when sick can result in lower productivity, thereby resulting to higher operational costs. Likewise, the degraded natural resources can result in higher cost of input to business operations. A supply of these resources becomes limited. This calls for a more systematic approach on sustainable environmental management in business planning and decision-making and operations. To help business operationalize this approach, we recommended that businesses also consider integrating green or resource-efficient practices in their daily operations and accounting and valuing the natural capital and the services provided by our ecosystems, including the environmental cost of their operations. For the government, natural capital accounting is vital for measuring our country's wealth and managing our resources. For businesses, it enables internalizing sustainability principles, making the supply chains more efficient and adaptive to different economic and climate crises. These key points that are highlighted, where both the government and the business sector can work together, will definitely expedite attaining the targets we have committed in relations to the SDGs and in laying down the foundation for a sustainable future. Strengthening collaboration among businesses and the private sectors, national and local governments, civil society, and international partners are essential prerequisites in forging the right path needed to advance the climate agenda in the country. Appropriate strategies that are implemented in a timely manner can triumph over this climate crisis. As international climate change cooperation provides impetus to accelerate global climate action, the Philippines has already made headway in shaping the overall policy environment on climate and disaster interventions. In the remaining months of the Duterte administration, the government will continue to improve the state of the environment and natural resources and increase the resilience of resource-dependent and vulnerable communities against converging risks arising from natural and biological hazards under a changing climate. These actions provide the foundation for advocating more climate-smart strategies for implementation in the next administration. I am pleased that FINEX has initiatives such as this, where we emphasize the critical role of each stakeholder in effecting positive change towards achieving the country's resilience and development thrusts, and of course, our SDGs. Once again, thank you, and I wish you all a meaningful series of fora. Let me close by echoing this statement of the United Nations on climate change, that climate emergency is a race we are losing, but it is also a race that we can win. And I would add, through significant behavioral change that once again recognize the importance of more sustainable environmental management. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary. Before we start with our panelists, let me call on the Financial Inclusion Committee Chairperson, Ms. Gay Santos, to give us an overview of today's theme. Gay?
Thank you very much, Joey. Allow me to share my screen, please. So good morning, President Mike Guerin, Honorable Undersecretary Sambilia. Thank you for that very optimistic message. The Financial Inclusion Committee, partners in financial inclusion. In the next 5 minutes or so, allow me to walk you through my personal journey on the forever relevant issues we will be tackling today. So do you remember this? July 16, 1990, duration 45 seconds, magnitude 7.7, lives lost 2,412, worth of damage 369 million. It has been more than a decade. My safe haven of childhood memories with my grandparents, Baguio City, was hit by a devastating earthquake. Fast forward, another place close to my heart, Batangas province, where my father grew up, was badly affected by the Taal volcano eruption immediately before the outbreak of the pandemic. According to NEDA, the damage caused by the Taal volcano eruption and typhoons in 2020 was around $2.21 billion. Fast forward today, Typhoon Odette death toll was at 405, with over 500,000 houses destroyed, leaving 24.5 billion in damages pesos. It seems like a small amount compared to others, but putting it in the context of the ongoing pandemic, the damages and losses today are just unquantifiable. Climate change is real. We do not fully appreciate that it is a problem. We think it is a problem waiting to happen. Quoting Kofi Annan, former UN Secretary General. The pandemic and all these devastations have magnified the need to value the basic: water, shelter, and air. Today, unfortunately, we find ourselves paying a high premium to access all these basic needs. However, there is an important learning from all this. Achieving a sustainable solution is within reach. It is a matter of coming together in bayanihan. We need to keep in mind that climate change, water, sanitation, shelter issues, and financial inclusion are not exclusive undertakings of multilaterals, NGOs, and the government. We all need to take accountability for this. On behalf of the Phoenix Financial Inclusion Committee, my co-chair, Jose Joey Thomas, thank you, Undersecretary Sambilia, Mr. Alberto Bocanegre of the International Federation of Red Cross, my colleague Don Johnston from Water.org, Mr. Jitendra Balani, Chair Willinger Center at the Habitat for Humanity, Ms. Lisa Celerio from SM Group, Mr. Dennis Valdez from Cebuano Lilier Bank, and Mrs. Joe Metcalf of GHD Foundation. And to you all for joining us today. I look forward to this fruitful dialogue. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Gay. At this point, let me introduce our four panelists in reverse order. Each panelist will have 15 minutes for their message. First is Lisa Celerio. Lisa is currently the Vice President for the Corporate Compliance Group of the SM Supermalls, with 20 years experience in mall operations. Lisa is also the Program Director for SM's Environment and Sustainability. She sits as a global member of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, Arise Private Sector Alliance for Disaster Resilient Societies. UNDRR is the focal point of the United Nations System for Disaster Risk Reduction and the custodian of the Sendai framework, supporting countries and societies in its implementation, monitoring, and review of the progress. Lisa is a registered civil engineer. Next, we have Jitendra Balani, Global Director, Program Design Housing Finance System for Habitat for Humanity's Terwilliger Center for Innovation in Shelter. Jitendra supports financial institutions to develop, test, and scale affordable housing finance solutions, develops global advisory solution, manages portfolio relationship, and drives the regional strategy and growth of the work with financial institutions. He has 12 years experience in advisory, consulting, and investment services in the financial inclusion sector, focusing on thematic areas of microfinance, digital financial services, and housing finance. Jitendra has worked in more than 70 financial intermediaries in 12 countries across Asia and Africa. Then we have Don Johnston. Don is the Senior Operations Director and Chief Representative for Indonesia of Water.org. He provides overall strategic guidance while supervising Water Credit, Water Connect, and Water Connect CBO. He has more than 30 years experience in microfinance in Indonesia and other countries, with a degree in economics and mathematics from Baylor University. Don has also taken units for his doctorate degree in economics at Harvard University. Now, our first speaker is Alberto Boganegre. Alberto has worked for the past 70 years in Africa, Europe, as well as the Middle East and North Africa and Asia, managing large and complex humanitarian operations in countries in conflict and post-conflict. With the IRFC, he has served as operations coordinator for West Africa, head of delegation for Niger, acting head of cluster for West Africa, and acting head of the delegation and programs coordination for the IFRC delegation in Greece. In October 2021, he was appointed head of delegation for the Philippines. Alberto holds a BA in public law from the University of Seville and has undergone a wide variety of program courses, an international executive MBA, a master's degree in international cooperation development, humanitarian aid, postgraduate programs in project monitoring and evaluation, and human resources strategic planning. Let's welcome our first speaker, Alberto Bocanegre. Alberto, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen and stop my presentation. Hope you can follow the presentation. I think it's if it works. Thank you very much for the Joy for the introduction, and thanks to Finex and Water.org for the invitation to this forum, the so-called webinars on affecting positive change through inclusion and focus on critical sustainable development goals. I'm very glad to be here also with my colleagues, panelists, Mrs. Gay, Mrs. Lisa, Mr. Jitendra, Mr. Don, Mr. Deniso. I'm honored to be here as together with a keynote speaker, Undersecretary Mrs. Mercedita Zombilla. Pleasure. Probably before I start, just to give you a little bit of background of what the Federation is and where we come from. So just to give you a little bit of background, the IFRC was founded back in 1919 in Paris after the aftermath of the World War I. We were originally called League of the Red Cross Societies, But then what's happened in 1918 after the First World War is that some national societies, some Red Crosses met in Paris to decide what was the way forward. It was in the frame of medical meeting. And basically they said that they wanted to create something bigger, and that was the League. And it continued being named as the League of the Red Cross until 1983, when it became the League of the Red Cross and Red Crescent. And then since 1981, we were called International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society. So this is who we are. And we are an international organization, 192 national society members based in Geneva. And we have delegations in countries. And this is the case in the Philippines. Since 2010, we have a formal delegation here in the Philippines. And we are in the Philippines because of the specific context of the country. Of course, we're here to support the Philippine Red Cross in the diverse operations that they're running in the country. But we're also supporting the needs that we encounter here. Basically, and as it was already been raised, this is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world, with a wide range of hazards, including typhoons, annual monsoon, related flooding, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. On average, we have around 20 tropical typhoons hitting the Philippine area of responsibility. And as I think it was mentioned before, the World Risk Report 2018 ranks the Philippines 9th in the highest disaster exposure and risk country. According also to 2021 Global Climate Risk Index report, Philippines ranks 4 of the countries affected by extreme weather events. For the Global Facility for Disaster Risk Reduction 2017, the report reveals that 60% of the country's total land area is exposed to multiple hazards. And so also 74% of the population is susceptible to this impact. Hydrometeorological events such as a storm, surge, droughts, and floods are also among the events that happen in the country. In terms of in terms of food and nutrition is also something that is worrying in terms of pattern during the last years. And poverty has also been a problem in the Philippines that has been exacerbated also with this COVID-19 pandemic. We will see that in shortly. The Philippines is also among the countries with the most prone natural disasters in the world, as we said, with hundreds of thousands of people displaced every year due to floods, storms, earthquakes, volcano eruptions, and about latest information for around 4 million new displacements were recorded in the Philippines in 2020. Regarding health and well-being, we continue having also some difficulties. Firstly, there is an increasing health impact of globalization and escalating climate change, as it was mentioned before. We don't live isolated. We live in a more interconnected world. And our way of living is very much guided by the way our world is changing. Secondly, changes in lifestyle and increasing prevalence of risk factors related to diet, tobacco, and high blood pressure contribute to rising incidence of non-communicable diseases in the country. Thirdly, despite advances in the management and treatment of infectious diseases, many citizens continue still to have and to suffer some diseases that still have treatment, but they cannot access to it. It's the case of HIV, measles, polio, diphtheria, which is still a problem in some parts of the country. And then, of course, the problem related to the COVID. The first case was identified on the 30th of January, 2020, and since then the pandemic has severely hit the country. This COVID situation has had several impacts, not only, as we said before, in the Philippines, but worldwide. Special burden for all women. And according also to our analysis, women were significantly impacted by the implications of the pandemic on livelihoods more than men. This is due to the higher likelihood of women being employed in informal sectors or in the domestic and tourist industries. Additionally, women were still expected to provide care in their household, including care for people with COVID-19 exposing women to higher risk infection. Lockdowns, mentioned before, is also resulting in isolation and removes some layers of protection for women, exposing them also for towards gender-based violence. People living in urban areas more severely affected than people living in other areas. Urban poor marginalized groups and people living in informal settlements with inadequate housing, healthcare, and infrastructure were disproportionately impacted by the health impact of and subsequent economic effect. Poverty rates in urban areas grew, and in some cases faster than rural areas. The pandemic was uniquely threatening to migrants and internally displaced people. People on the move were more likely to lose jobs and also were affected by access to employment. In this context, as the Undersecretary General was mentioning before, there was also this situation that happened late last year. So basically, what we saw within this context was in December 2021, during the 9th or the 16th of December, we witnessed what was initially a typhoon category 2, something moving to a higher speed, a wind speed, and it became very quickly a super typhoon category 5 in a matter of hours. It gained speed and it hit the country not one time, but 9 times. And what was shocking was that it was unexpected. I mean, we have not seen this type of super typhoon happening in this hemisphere at this time of the year. It was totally unexpected, and the way it shocked and the way it continued and the way it harmed the different locations was really impactful and something unexpected. It affected not only communities, it affected also infrastructure. That we are now having available and the numbers have been growing in the past. It was mentioned that more than 10 million persons have been affected by this typhoon, more than 10,000 barangays in more than 10 regions, 420 deaths, 78 persons missing, and more than 2,000 persons injured. Houses damaged was mentioned before. Also, almost 1.9 million houses have been damaged, almost 500,000, 420,000 totally damaged, and 1.5 million partially damaged. People evacuated, people continue to be evacuated, whether in evacuation centers or other places. And displaced persons, the number has been changing over the last weeks, but still we have this high number of persons affected and being displaced. What is the response that we have from the Red Cross? So we respond also from our side through different ways. We have what we call our strategy 2030, which has 3 main goals. The main one is to anticipate, and here disaster risk reduction plays a key role. The second one is to build resilient communities, where dignity is a key player and where we need to involve the local population to find local solutions. And the third component of our response is also through community engagement with an inclusive and a peaceful approach. That is the way we work. And the way we work is also based on several components. And we need to be there in the right time. And that means investing before the event happens in disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation, and integrating these across all areas of work. We need to work to ensure that we can always be in the right place effectively and using the technology and innovation to anticipate risks and disasters. We need to work together to make sure that we have the right capacities. And that means efficiently coordinating across our regional and global networks to ensure that we can respond in increasing the humanitarian demands. And finally, we need to continue to develop the right skills, building the capabilities needed to respond to our increasing complex humanitarian environment. What are our main lessons learned? The main lessons learned is that we need to continue investing and promoting innovation. Things like forecast-based financing has been proved to be a useful tool to anticipate things to happen. Social protection to shock responses, meteorological information and interpretation, use of drones in terms of improving early warning, early response mechanisms, training local population on disaster risk reduction and climate change initiatives. Secondly, this is about localization. In full alignment also with the Grand Bargain, when there is a disaster that happens, local entities and communities become the first responders. And for such, we need to be there prepared. Local solutions need to be adapted to local problems. Third, increasing efficiency and effectiveness. And I think this is something key. And in full alignment also with the Grand Bargain, through increasing coordination, promoting duplication, avoiding duplication, promoting impartial assessment, information management, we achieve this efficiency among the humanitarian actors. Humanitarian diplomacy and advocacy, also something key, because we need to strengthen the way we advocate for the humanitarian principles, as well as the compliance with our rules and regulations inside international forums. And accountability. By creating a positive environment where accountability is present, supporting the Paris Declaration on the effectiveness and the agenda for action, we promote regulations, we promote more inclusive, we promote more transparent organizations and operations. Let me finish by proposing here to the panel and to the participants 3 questions. First one is, can we change this pattern? We're probably building a more vulnerable world. Countries and communities and individuals that were already vulnerable due to conflict, climate change, poverty, were now pushed towards an intense pressure. But are we moving in building in the right direction? Are we strengthening our solidarity and humanity? Second question, impact of the pandemic towards sustainable development goals. This pandemic has affected during more than 2 years now. And the road that started to accomplish in setting these indicators to SDGs by 2030 is now a little bit weaker in terms of our response. Will we be able to keep these objectives? Many countries are struggling with the gaps between public health, emergency management, social protection, laws and regulations. The lack of preparedness made it harder for some countries to build a comprehensive response to what has simultaneously become a public health emergency, a global economic impact, and a political social crisis. Third question to you is, are we moving towards equality or inequalities? I have the impression that the world is on a different course now. Social and economic recovery relies on local capacities, and it is to us to find the appropriate ones and to work with the communities to find adequate and sustainable alternatives to this dilemma. I think it was mentioned before, a quote from Ban Ki-moon. I remember 2014, the climate and the summit climate, he mentioned, he was asked about what were the alternatives that we could have to this situation if there was a plan B. And he said, no, there's no plan B, absolutely no plan B, because there's no planet B. Thank you very much. Hope we will have a very nice debate and looking forward to discussing in this presentation together with the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Now let's welcome Mr. Don Johnston, Senior Operations Director for Indonesia of Water.org. Don, please.
Thank you very much. Allow me to share my screen as well. And it's a pleasure to be with you. I'm normally based in Indonesia. I'm actually coming to you from the United States right now. It's wonderful to be with the panelists, with Madam Undersecretary. It's a true honor to be here. Water.org is very active in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia as well. And our name in a way says it all, and yet it also does not say very much. about how we work. And so I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking to you about who we are and what we do. For our organization, we don't view water as something that people can purchase or can clean water. They can purchase or consume more of as their income grows. We actually view water and safe sanitation as the foundation of the building one's way out of poverty, of breaking that cycle of poverty. We see that it's right at the core of economic development, and it's very often the way of starting households, communities on the path to prosperity from the path of poverty, from a situation of poverty. And so when we think about it, when we think about water.org, we think about it from that perspective. What can we do as an organization, as a relatively small group of dedicated people, now organized in 11 offices around the world, based in the United States? This organization is nowhere near large enough to deal with the problem of water, the global problem of water. And yet, there is a role. Water.org is a very different organization than it was when its predecessor organization began 30 years ago. Like many other organizations, Water.org started with the idea of digging wells, of laying pipes, bringing water to individual households. But it quickly became clear that that's never going to achieve a solution on a scale that could actually contribute to solving the water problem at a global level. And so that's when the founders and some of the early thinkers within water.org began to think, what is the solution going to be? That's where it became clear that the solution wasn't going to be private philanthropy on its own. It clearly wasn't going to be even government resources. Most governments don't only have resources to cover a fraction of the investment needed for water and sanitation. And so it quickly became clear that the best solution was going to, if possible, was going to be to find a way to involve market forces, to find market-friendly solutions that would help make progress towards safe water for all, safe sanitation for all. Water.org has been working for more than a decade with this idea that we can make progress towards bringing water and sanitation to everyone in a way that is market friendly. Not because we think that ideologically we're in some sense pro-market, although we certainly are, but really it's the only solution we have. And we have seen over and over that this is a solution and a set of solutions and a set of orientations that can help solve the problem. And this is in Southeast Asia, we see challenges and we also see opportunities that highlight the need for moving quickly in working out solutions to water and sanitation. But also opportunities. We see economic growth on a fast pace. We see opportunities from a relatively young population. And yet we also see the challenge of a significant portion of the population still lacking access to basic water and sanitation. We also see government dedication, government commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, and more specifically to becoming open defecation free. That's certainly a key short-term goal for the Philippines. It is for Indonesia, where I'm based as well, and for other countries in Southeast Asia. All of these stakeholders have similar and aligned goals, and then there is a possibility. There are solutions out there that if we work together, we can utilize to make much more progress than we're making now towards solving the problem of access to water and sanitation. You know, right now, in some ways, if you look at the statistics, the situation is much better than it was a few years ago or a decade ago. Both Indonesia and the Philippines, by some measures, are to the point where they're really trying to reach the last 10% with basic access to water. And basic access to water is water that has the potential to be clean, but the access may not be fully to the household. That said, the last 10% is not an easy task. That serving that last 10% of the population, as you might guess, is much harder than serving the 10% before that or the 10% before that. These are people who are more remote, more difficult to reach, more difficult economic circumstances. Sanitation, the situation is a little bit worse. And when we step back and really think about what is the quality of the services being provided, then we can see the true challenge that remains in front of us. That if we want to be able to provide sustained safe water to households, we have to solve the problem of sanitation as well. If we want to provide sustained water access, we also have to come up with solutions that mitigate the effects of climate change and ideally prevent some of them too. And so this is how water.org approaches this. At its heart is very simple. And the idea really brings in two key ideas. One, of course, I've already mentioned, it's market-friendly solutions, trying to harness the power of enterprises to bring the services that people need, understanding that even low-income people have the ability to solve their own problems, to meet those challenges for their own household welfare if they have access to the right tools. We've seen the value that microfinance can play in this, and this is why in water.org we're big believers in microfinance too. We have an initiative in all of our country offices called Water Credit that makes sure that we're harnessing the value, the power of microfinance for bringing water and sanitation access to households. We're making sure that microfinance institutions and other financial institutions that want to serve low-income households or provide wholesale finance to microfinance institutions have the knowledge and understand how to design and launch products that truly meet that need for low-income households. We want to ensure that low-income households have the access, the financial access they need in order to obtain the services they need. This is the learning from microfinance over, again, the last 30 years, where we have seen the value that the right kind of microfinance can have in the hands of low-income people. At the same time, we have learned in more recent years that a key part of the solution is also going to be working with the supply providers, working with water utilities, sanitation utilities, water supply providers, more recently with sanitation contractors as well, with the idea of expanding service coverage. And for some water utilities, it's in a sense as simple as convincing them that serving low-income households, low-income areas is a viable market. One of the things we often do is help utilities conduct mapping exercises, conduct market demand exercises that convince them that low-income households are going to be a viable market for their services. For small utilities, water service providers, and occasionally for larger ones as well, a growing part of our work is making sure that they have access to the finance they need. Of making sure that specialized sources of capital, whether from in-country or out-of-country, can flow into the sector to help finance that investment that's so greatly needed. Again, the opportunity to use market forces is there if we can arrange the tools and bring the expertise and the knowledge and the experience to reassure the key actors that this is something that can be conducted at sufficiently low risk, that it is something that has a proven track record and a best practice on how to do it. Obviously, as we work in the market with key institutions that have the idea of putting their expertise to the purpose of providing water and sanitation access, there are some policy and government program aspects to this as well. Very often, a blended approach of government funding through specific programs can be complementary or even jumpstart progress in areas and key areas and among key households, or in building up the capital base that some institutions need in order to survive and thrive in particular areas. There are the policy advocacy that we carry out with governments is generally directly related to the work that we have done with the partners. And in fact, the advocacy work that we do is almost always in conjunction with the financial institutions and with the water utilities we're working with. So the idea here is to find those partnerships. We don't work with every financial institution in a country. We have to find the financial institutions whose interests are aligned and who have the potential to work at scale. We need to find partners who are thinking long-term, who are committed to developing productive and innovative relationships in this area, and who have a vision of scale, who are thinking about how we can work to grow, continue to grow the business and grow the access over time. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we also don't want to advocate approaches that are going to cause excessive risk or excessive losses to our partner enterprises. We have to find solutions to co-create them together that create real value. And the value, to our partner enterprises may be bottom line, it may be top line. That is, it may be a way of presenting the face of the partner, of the enterprise to the public as an enterprise that cares. It may be a way of opening up new markets. There are many motivators for partner enterprises, we're more than happy to work in a variety of circumstances with the right partners. And the result of doing this has been pretty special, including here in Southeast Asia. We're really active in 3 countries: in Indonesia, in the Philippines, where we've seen more than half of our impact over the last several years. We've been active in Indonesia and in the Philippines for close to 7 years now, and the impact has been significant. We have been able to facilitate access for water and/or sanitation for more than 10 million people in the region. Want that to continue to grow. The gap, the need is still there. The key to that success so far, and the key to future success, is finding the right partners and keeping the partners we have, helping them maintain maintain their interest, maintain their motivation, and find new innovative solutions to the challenges we're going to see. When we work with through our partners, the people who are being impacted, positively affected, are typically households with incomes under $6 a day. That is under 3 times the global poverty threshold. They're 93% of the loans that are being made by microfinance institutions are going to women as a key point of welfare for the household, and 77% of these are rural. This is some of the benefit that has been gained so far through working with the partners that we have. But we can't stop there because we know that there are growing challenges and some new strategies as well that we need to continue to work through. We know that that water resilience is a major challenge now, that the progress that we've made is fragile, that because of climate change and because sanitation itself is incomplete, that the progress in water access has to be cemented. We have to come up with continually improved quality of access to water. That means improving the sanitation chain. It means finding new solutions that create less stress on limited groundwater sources such as rainwater capture. It also means working with water utilities to use the water they have more efficiently. One of the solutions that everybody is getting excited about sort of at the same time right now is non-revenue water reduction for utilities. And there can be very straightforward, sort of old school approaches to leak reduction, but also some very innovative and very exciting applications of technology to try to streamline that process and make it more efficient, to actually make the investment that's needed much more efficient and much more productive. We know that there's also potential for digitalization of both financial access, financial institutions, and utilities for growing efficiency. The challenge is, can we see this done in a way that actually leads to greater access and actually leads to meaningful improvement in the financial situation, the financial outcomes of these institutions? Is digitalization going to be something that improves the consumer experience for middle and upper income consumers, or is it going to be something that has a more profound impact on the lives of low income people? So that's a challenge and it's an opportunity. We also see that there are ways to build in new sources of finance, to guide new types of finance into the sector, to make sure that financial institutions that are already reaching low-income households and utilities, whether small district-based water districts or larger utilities, have the resources they need to make the investment they need. So I will. We at water.org are not complacent. We're also we try to be humble in the sense that we know that the solution is not with us. The solution is with partners, and it's with innovation. It's working through the markets, working through government policy that supports those changes so that we can find the solutions that are needed so that people have access to the water and to the sanitation services they need. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to join the discussion and talk about some of the challenges and solutions later on.
Thank you very much, Don. Now let's welcome Jitendra Balani. Jitendra?
Hi everyone, please allow me to share my screen. Hi, thank you. So, hi everyone. So, we are an international NGO that works towards solving the housing poverty across the world. We have presence in 70 countries. So, therefore, in this presentation, we will try to speak on affordable housing and its intersection with the financial services, especially in relation to sustainability and disaster resiliency. Next slide. Okay. So as we know, in December, Super Typhoon Odette struck in the Philippines and affected 11 regions out of 17, damaging both public and the private infrastructure. So there are varying estimates for the number of houses damaged and the total value of damage, but Alberto did highlight in the previous presentation that at least 1.9 million houses were damaged. And this is a huge loss to the country's infrastructure. So in Cebu province, more than 400,000 houses were totally and partially destroyed, representing 24% of the total damage caused by the second deadliest disaster of 2021. Now, this housing infrastructure, which has been lost because of this typhoon, further increases the housing backlog in the Philippines. Let me take you to the next slide, which highlights the housing backlog. Before that, just one more point, important point, which I wanted to highlight. So there has been a disaster response from a variety of stakeholders. For example, at present, the Cebu provincial government has already distributed almost $400 worth of coupon cards and medicine packs as part of its Dasik Subbo program. This is a typical cash transfer program, but customized for meeting the housing needs of affected families. This has jump-started the recovery of typhoon victims from 36 LGUs, local government units in Cebu, whose houses were totally destroyed or damaged. The coupon card system also contained almost $160 of prepaid vouchers for buying construction materials from merchant partners, so that the beneficiaries can kickstart their home building process. Unfortunately, there have been many low-income families who have been left out of this cash transfer program. So this slide basically just mentions the housing shortage in the country. So housing deficit in the Philippines is projected to rise to 15 million homes by 2022. And low-income households face the biggest hurdles to adequate housing because of a variety of reasons. Understandably, low-income households generally lack credit history, and they are part of informal economy where they do not have access to conventional mortgages from mainstream financial institutions. So apart from the quantitative deficit, there is also a qualitative deficit in the housing stock among existing households. Now, if we look at the government's budget allocation, it's very difficult for the governments to meet this housing need all alone. And especially in the wake of the pandemic, where the fiscal discipline has been strained, it is not prudent to just pass the buck to the government all alone. And the housing backlog continues to rise and expose vulnerable segments of the population. So just to highlight, we were able to quantify one of the segments in the housing sector that builds their houses incrementally. And one thing which I want to highlight here is that more than 85% of the construction in the developing world is done incrementally. So similarly, in the Philippines, there are at least 3.1 million households, which is basically 13 million Filipinos. They build incrementally, and depending upon the resource which they are able to mobilize. And the total size of the market is estimated at $13 billion. And this is a very conservative estimate, which we did back in 2018 in one of the studies. So let's look at the key pain points of these low-income families who build incrementally. Access to housing finance, as I highlighted in the previous slide, that continues to be the significant barrier for these families. The second thing is availability and access to the quality materials and the services. On many times, because of the limited budget, they would compromise on the type of materials that they would choose for the home construction. Similarly, we have got several insights from the field where the labor and the masons that families generally work with, they are also not skilled enough to recommend to families the best solutions depending upon their budgets. So all of this, affect the resiliency component of the housing structures. The other pain point which we have found is the overall process is also defined by the local culture norms and the social norms. And those norms really influence the construction practices and the behavior of the families. So one example is that we recently did one study in the Philippines where we wanted to understand why there has been a very low adoption of an innovative building material. And the reason, which we found from the low income families was that we do not see such materials in our day-to-day life. We don't see that middle income and the high income groups adopt such materials. So how can you expect that we can adopt such materials? So we have to consider the 360-degree view of their situation and the pain points, and accordingly work towards such solutions. So this is a persona which we call Ed and Gina. This is a typical low-income family which has been severely affected by this typhoon Odette. They are traditionally based in the rural and the peri-urban areas, and they build their homes incrementally. The major pain point is that they lack access to quality building materials, formal financing channels, and also the staff, the labor and the masons that they deal with, they also lack training and the quality building standards. And often, this is an invisible market segment. The private sector and even the public sector do not consider them as part of their business priorities, and that's why this segment lacks access to many important solutions around the housing sector. So just to give you an example, these were some of the pictures that we took for Ed and Gina before the typhoon struck. So typical requirements of their house would be, painting, roofing, home extensions such as adding a room, and improving the finishing of the house, the toilet and the bathroom would be the typical requirements. Let us see, how these requirements have suddenly changed in the wake of the post typhoon. Now the roof, which were of substandard quality, they have completely flown off. The walls have been cracked. The foundations initially also were not strong enough. So now again, they are further compromised. You cannot build your houses further unless you address the foundation and the structural issues first. And definitely the leaked ceilings. So one important learning which we had is that, and Alberto did highlight on that particularly in the previous presentation. So if we were to solve this crisis, not one solution is the panacea. I think the entire sector, including the public and the private sector, will have to see this segment as a business and a viable opportunity, and work towards the solutions for meeting their housing needs. So the solution that we need to provide to this segment is around build it right, which is basically they should have access to the right design of the house, right materials, they should have access to the right skills in the form of quality labor, and right information so that they can take an informed decision about the material purchase, about the labor selection, about the design of the house. And of course, the financing is very important, the appropriate financing solution. Let me take you through the sustainability point of view now. Let us evaluate the housing sector from the sustainability point of view. So the building sector has high potential for improving its carbon footprint according to IPCC. It contributes 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And if we see the sector, it still has reliance on typical materials and processes with deep carbon footprints. But it is important to note that the sector is also a gateway to achieving several SDGs. One of the reports from Real, who is again a well-known market facilitator in the affordable housing sector, they highlighted that climate smart homes offer a doorway to achieving 16 out of 17 of the SDGs. And if we look at the climate friendly building sector and the green building sector, the market is also growing rapidly. So it is pegged at such a volume that there is a huge need of impact oriented capital. So green building markets, for example, grew approximately 10% from 2020 to 2021. And the current market size is around 239 billion USD. Similarly, if we look at the entire affordable housing segment across the world, there is a market opportunity of $16 trillion based on the McKinsey Global Institute. And we also highlighted, how this need translates for the Philippines as a country. Our conservative estimates is $13 billion, but it only caters to one particular segment. There are other segments as well who do not have access to housing. So if we add that, there is a huge amount of impact capital which is needed in the sector. So one of the things which we have been doing is especially taking care of these low-income builders. We work with the private sector and we help them develop solutions for these incremental builders. Understandably, one of the major pain points is the financing. So we work with the microfinance institution and help them develop very affordable solutions, uniquely customized around the pain points of these families. We also have a blended finance facility, as Madam Secretary highlighted in her speech. So this is also very critical because many times these microfinance institutions also need capital for on-lending purpose. So for that purpose, we have 100 million USD micro build fund, which we established to invite the private sector just to demonstrate to them that affordable housing is not only an impactful solution, but is also a viable business solution. So in the Philippines, I just wanted to particularly highlight our work in the countries has really helped almost 700,000 low-income builders to improve their housing units. And this overall work in last 7 years has unlocked the capital amounting to 173 million USD. So as I stated earlier, this is an incremental nature of construction. So these families generally take such loans every 2 years, every 3 years until they have a fully functioning housing unit. So imagine the market size if we multiply this by 3 to 4 times until the family gets a fully functioning unit. This slide, which is basically our last slide, we wanted to capture our insights, our learnings that we have been having by particularly working in this sector. One of the important initiatives which might happen, which can be a huge boost to the sector, is that the Government Department of Housing and Urban Settlement is working on a green housing microfinance policy framework. So we are also one of the stakeholders where we are acting as a key informant. I think this could be a game changer from the climate and the sustainability point of view for the housing sector. Overall, we wanted to highlight that based on our experience, definitely access to finance is one of the major challenge, but we need systemic changes to really promote climate friendly and the resilient housing structures among the low income households. So in addition to the financing, we also need a behavior change among communities so that they can undertake safe and sound construction practices. We also need a platform where we can promote the housing innovation, because there are many budding entrepreneurs which have innovative and local customized solutions for markets, but they often need the right platform to scale their product prototypes into a commercial proposition. And then we not only need financing for the borrowers, but we need for the entire ecosystem. And primarily 2 stakeholders are very important: the MSMEs, basically through which Ed and Gina purchase their building materials, which are a typical, a material supplier located in the vicinity of their house. They also need capital so that they can manage good inventory of the building materials. They can provide a bouquet of solutions to the low-income families. And then we also need financing availability for the affordable housing developers. The other thing which we wanted to highlight, there is a very, very minimal awareness on the climate-friendly construction practices. So we need a massive drive around the awareness, and we also need a right incentive mechanism where the awareness leads to the adoption of such solutions. And in the last, we need the long-term availability of the capital to the sector. So that's it from our side. We are really grateful for this opportunity, for allowing us to speak on the affordable housing and its intersection with the financial services and the sustainability.
Thank you very much, Jitendra. Our fourth panelist is Lisa Celerio, who's Vice President for Sustainability and Compliance with the SM Supermalls. Lisa, please.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everyone attending this forum. I am Lisa Celerio, representing Mr. Hansi, our chairman of the Executive Committee of SM Prime Holdings. SM Prime is one of the largest property developers in Southeast Asia and is known for innovative and sustainable lifestyle cities, the largest in terms of assets in the Philippines. We develop and operate malls, condominiums and leisure residences and resorts, office buildings, and hotels and convention centers. And as a responsible corporation, SM Prime endeavors to be a catalyst for economic growth by enriching the lives of millions of Filipinos. SM Prime stands on 4 pillars of sustainability: economic, environment, people, and community. Sustainability principles are part of our core business strategy. Under the economic pillar, we aim to contribute to our nation's growth through our various businesses. For the environment, we ensure that the integration of sustainability and resilience are in all our properties. We are heavily invested on climate-smart solutions and has ventured in renewable energy, green technologies, such as the building management systems, the sequential batch reactor, tertiary plants for water recycling. Under people, we implement professional development and wellness programs for our employees' growth, as well as our business partners. And for the community, we uplift the lives of the people where we are located. Our sustainability journey started in SM Supermalls in the early 2000s, even before sustainability became a byword in the corporate world. SM's programs are focused on energy, water, solid waste management. Particularly in water conservation, we recognize the need to save this precious resource as our business operations, our dependencies on water resources have great impact. And as such, we made modifications in our process early on. Our major program on water conservation is from the recycling of water for our built-in sewage treatment plants. We pioneered the installation of sewage treatment plants in the Philippines, or STPs, and further came up with the recycling of treated water for operational use, such as in our aircon systems and cooling towers, the water closet flushing, landscaping, watering, maintenance, and groundskeeping for extra water. We're looking towards a zero discharge for our malls in the near future. Prior to 2020, SM Prime has decreased its water consumption by 36% and has recycled around 3.4 million cubic meters on the average yearly due to its water recycling program. In one of our properties, the Costa del Jamilo, we operate a desalination plant which converts seawater for non-potable water use with a capacity of 600 cubic meters per day. Additionally, We practice rainwater harvesting, and on top of this, we have already in place 22 of our malls with rainwater catchment basins built underneath the structures of our malls as a resilient investment. This is part of our climate resilience program to minimize floodwaters in the communities during strong rains. Water scarcity is a growing concern due to the changing climate and the growing population. Thus, our business has to adapt and innovate on the light of climate change. SM Prime has become part of the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction's Private Sector Alliance for Disaster Resilient Societies, or we call ARISE for the private sector, primarily because we want to be catalyzing change in our industry. Mr. Hans was the first Filipino member of the UN Private Sector Advisory Group and the first Filipino board member on the ARISE Global Network. He promotes DRR and climate resilience with his spheres of influence and reach. The private sector has the capability to lead and implement science and technology-based solutions for adapting to and addressing challenges to protect our investments as well. And you can see some of the projects on disaster risk resilience in terms of designs. SM Prime is a strong supporter of public-private partnerships, or PPPs, and has an active corporate social responsibility programs. We believe in the strengths of these advocacies to reach every citizen, communities, and help our local government units. We are supporting programs such as the National Resilience Council with their Adopt a City campaign. It's a resilience campaign, science-based technology solutions for the LGUs. We have supported Manila Observatory's weather forecasting and many other programs and organizations. We adhere to our water sustainability commitments, resiliency, efficiency, and quality in our programs. And in all our efforts, we aim to contribute to the welfare and overall sustainability of our community, our environment, and our country. And we will continue to look for opportunities and ways to contribute to the sustainable development goals for the Philippines. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I will now turn over the forum to Dennis Valdez. Dennis is the president of Cebuana Lubilier Bank for the question and answer portion of the panelists. Dennis, I turn over the forum to you.
Thank you, Joey. Again, it's a pleasure, hearing all of these initiatives and how everyone is trying to work together and to promote, the SDG, or Sustainable Development Goals. No? Maybe before we start, I would also like to invite our attendees, in case you have any questions, you may put this in the chat box so that I can ask this live to our panelists. So to start off, maybe I'll just, I'll throw a general question to all the panelists, and maybe one of you could answer this. I think one here that I see right now is what has been done, maybe, or what should be prioritized in terms of working with the government or with private sectors so that, we can have sustainable growth, or probably even on the disaster resilience. I think that's a really hot topic, especially for the Philippines. What do you think should be the priority of these goals or these institutions? Maybe you can start with Alberto. I think he touched on this earlier.
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's subject to a long debate. I think from our side, one of the things that we think it's relevant, and again, probably direct cross has a different perspective, since we're also auxiliaries to the public power. So that gives us a different type of relation with these institutions. But I think one of the things that we mentioned before is about localization. So from our side, localization does not mean only that we need to strengthen local capacities. It means also that we need to find local solutions and that we need to engage with local actors. So that is the key way forward. So one of the things that we're trying to do and where we're trying to strengthen our direction is also about the co-responsibility of the local actors in finding jointly solutions. So this is not about me going somewhere to propose a response. It's about how do we engage with the local community so that they also co-own the solution. And that's I think the way we should be working. We have a name for that from the federation perspective. We call that community engagement and accountability. And that goes through a wide range of interventions. But something that was mentioned here during the debate is also about CSR, corporate social responsibility. I think companies, actors should also be on the forefront of the response. Otherwise, this is not going to be sustainable. So we can fundraise and we can find solutions following patterns, trends coming from, I don't know, other countries, other actors, but we need to strengthen the local vision and the local solutions, and that's the way forward from my perspective. So we need to be there with them from the beginning together. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. What about you, Don? Would you like to chime in? Would you have any thoughts on this?
Oh, many. It's a challenge. It's a challenge to pick a few priorities, but clearly some of the real opportunities that are in the sector right now are to look at how we can make particularly the water enterprises do a better job of serving low-income households, and in particular, we see huge potential in both employing non-revenue water strategies as well as digitalization. Many aspects of employing technology to make water enterprises more efficient in order to make a real change in their financial picture and enable them, if they choose, if they see the value of the market, to serve more low-income households and to serve them more efficiently with less, frankly, less lost water. We see in Philippines, as in Indonesia, as in many other countries, rates of non-revenue water of 30% or more, which means that there's just a lot of low-hanging fruit there in terms of potential gains for the enterprise. Beyond that, in some sense, we see solutions already for microfinance in contributing to access for households. We see what improvements need to be carried out. It's a challenge sometimes to figure out exactly how we'll do it with the water enterprises. Where we are in desperate need of real innovation and a feasible business model is in community scale sanitation. We're so far behind in sanitation compared to where we are in water, actually. And this is an area where, frankly, we need the private sector to help us leapfrog to find technologies and solutions that will not only solve the technical problem, but that will create business models that will work for communities.
Thank you, Don. What about you, Jitendra? Would you like to add to that?
Hi, Dennis. Dennis, I just wanted to respond to one very important question around the monitoring aspects, which a participant, Jose, has asked us.
Okay.
So when we are working in this ESG sector, what type of quantitative or the qualitative metrics should we use so that we really, are informed that we are moving in the right direction around climate resiliency? So one of the very practical examples I want to take from the affordable housing sector is that, so there are well-known certifications. Let's say if a building is green and the climate resilient, there are well-known certifications from agencies such as IFC. They have initiated EDGE certification, right? So that certification clearly tells you how efficient your building is and how much CO2 would you be able to save every year, depending upon your construction typologies and the quality and the building materials. So such mechanisms, give us a confidence to stakeholders like all of us who are very much, interested in knowing how much impact we are making. It's very easy to quantify the output metrics with the help of such certifications. In fact, I was working with a well-known impact investor in Frankfurt, and they also had a very similar mechanism to use whenever they were assessing investment opportunities. The other thing is that we also have to have a holistic view. So not just tracking the output metrics, but also the outcome metrics, right? How we are changing the lives of the people with climate friendly and construction technology. So for that, we need a deep dives into understanding the experience of the families. So qualitative interviews from them and understanding from them, how their lives have been changed with the climate resilient housing structure or a innovative, building material. So output and outcome metrics, I would recommend to track, and I would also recommend to make use of industry certification and standards while quantifying the impact.
Okay. Thank you, Jitendra, for that. I think that was a question from Jerome Pascual. Yes, Lisa, maybe if I can, change the question a bit. I think, and it's really good that we could see that the SM Group really is one of the pioneers, really, of one of the largest conglomerates in the Philippines, and really took the step in terms of providing your sustainability plans for the whole group. So for those probably that are just starting off, you did mention it's starting to become a byword already. What advice would you give, let's say, to those that are starting their journey? What should they, what tips could you give them so that they can develop their own sustainability plans?
Thank you very much, Dennis. Well, actually, when we started our sustainability program, what's fantastic in our company is it started from the top. It's the owners, the president themselves who believe in sustainability. Why? Because they know that it is good for business. The investment it's not considered a cost. It's not an expense in our company. It's a capital investment because it's part of the core business strategy. So for those companies who are just starting to put up their sustainability, laying down, you have to get the top management. You have to be able to convince them to put up a sustainability program, especially that we are all focused on on energy, water, and solid waste. And these are major problems that we are encountering right now. So they know, the management, they know that these are the coming problems, day to day you encounter in your business. And if you see and do something about it, it will even give you more, in the bottom line. We can, when we did upfront, it's a very big expense. It's a big investment, but we have reaped the labor of this investment. The triple bottom line is there, and you have to believe it. If you invest heavily on it, the business, not only the image, you pay. There are times that you even pay to have to put up branding under your company, but just do the right thing. And do the right programs for your company, from the CSRs to your sustainability programs, your business will be good. So I really is promoting a sustainability program to go to the board, so that and say that it will just enhance your business.
Right.
It's a business case. SM is a very good business case. When we invested in water, in energy, when we were able to reduce our energy consumption by around 30% with our building management system and green technologies, well, this was such a great profit bottom line.
Great. So I guess if I will summarize it, it's really more of a mindset, really. I think the initial reaction there is this is going to be another expense program,
Yes.
right? It's really convincing the board and the principals really that this is an investment. It has a long-term sustainability, and we will reap the benefits in the future, even in the near future, especially how the Philippines is really disaster prone, or I think that's really how to put it on the table, so to speak. So maybe I'll take another question here that was in the chat group. If you're to design a partnership for everyone in the panel, can you briefly articulate a project concept that immediately comes to mind on how the organizations in the panel can work together? Anyone wants to start this question, or anyone has thoughts on this?
Oh,
Sure, please. Yes.
SMEs into public-private partnerships. No, it's we have different partnerships in terms of other investments, but let me just give you the public-private partnerships model that we have. We have invested in National Resilience Council. It is a science-based solution that adapts cities and teach them the resilience program, a 3-year track of prepare, adapt, and transform. At first, it's really hard to see the outcome of such science-based solutions, because unless you experience disasters, then at the time you can see how it is well for you. So when we invested in that, I think LGUs who are members of the Adapt City program have seen the preparedness of their local government units into the program. So we are into preparedness because, our country, even our government, are already masters of relief and operations. But, for the business sector, we have to be prepared. Preparedness is where we want to espouse further.
Thank you for that. What about you, Alberto? I mean, we're talking about all these in terms of being prepared, disaster resiliency, and I know definitely the Red Cross is really at the forefront, and I guess I would like, on behalf of everyone here, we'd like to thank the Red Cross for really being at the forefront during the disasters that's happening nationwide. So what about your thoughts on that? What program do you think, or partnership that we can have right now, especially for the panelists that are in the call right now?
That's a super interesting question. And again, I mean, probably the congratulations. I would refer that to the Philippine Red Cross, which is an amazing organization, working intensely in every humanitarian operation. I mean, super happy to be here with this group of panelists, and I think there are some ideas that were mentioned. And I think from our perspective, and each one has its own, would I say, ideas behind how to partnership and what would be the priority areas from our side. I mean, it's very clear. I think I think from our perspective, it's not about the needs out there. So I mean, it's about, I mentioned before, about creating efficiencies and effectiveness, but I think each one has its own area of expertise. From my perspective, it's more about the core principles and values, and because that is what lies behind any type of intervention, and that is where our credibility lies behind. So for us, it's more about keeping our principles of independence, impartiality, and neutrality very much protected. That is what ensures and guarantees that we are able to reach the communities, that we're respected, that our programs are resilient and remains within the community. And of course, another principle, which is from our side, the humanity. So we need to serve people in need, and that is something that has been raised by my colleagues, and I fully agree with them. I think it was mentioned by Don and by Jitendra. So very much aligned with what they said. Probably just one last point. So we have some NGOs, private sector here. I think there's also, and I think it was mentioned before it were not taken by visa, which is the importance of the academic sector. And I'm mentioning this because I think universities have also, in the research and the investment that they do, there's a lot to learn also from them. And we sometimes neglect their capacities also to, how would I say, brainstorm together on proper solutions. So this know-how exists, but we sometimes do not go there to explore what we can take from them and implement that in the field. And that is also related to efficiency and effectiveness and local resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto.
Dennis,
Yes,
I
go ahead,
just
please,
wanted
Jitendra.
I just wanted to add particularly on a very practical example of a multi-stakeholder partnership. So we have been implementing one project in Negros Occidental, which aims to build houses for the 10,000 poor families. And, it's a technology which was developed by Base Bahe Foundation. So it's a cement bamboo frame technology, which is a combination of disaster resilience, sustainability, and innovation, shelter innovation, all together fused into this bamboo cement frame technology. Now we started with a very small prototype of having bamboo cement houses for just 50 families. Now that prototype had to be scaled up because we had donors, who wanted to scale that technology because of its obvious nature. So now currently, we have almost reached from 50 families to around 800 families. And this has only been possible because we have been working with LGUs in having the land allotments. We have been working with the Pagibik agencies like Pagibik so that, families can get an affordable housing finance solution. And there are various other bodies, which are working in tandem at the very local level. Especially the DISHOD is also very much involved. So just wanted to highlight one practical example where we could achieve, climate resiliency and sustainability by having a multi-stakeholder partnership who have the shared vision and mission. And we are on our pathway, to achieve that outcome of 10,000 families.
Oh, that's very great to hear, Jitendra. Actually, if I may just since we're talking about multi-stakeholder partnerships, I think Jitendra and especially Don, no, I think you have quite an aligned, especially once you put up. Obviously, if you put up a house, obviously you would require water and sanitation. So, if I may just be, if you could just indulge me, what do you think? How do you think the two of you can work together, or your organizations can work together in terms of your respective goals?
Well, obviously, and we have started a little bit of discussion prior to this as well. This is not our first time to meet with each other, but one of the places we start is for water.org to understand and to tap into the expertise from Habitat to understand what a resilient toilet means, and also to make sure that when we're talking about incremental housing, that the toilet and the bathroom is one of the first things that gets built. That we make sure that there is enough education and in some ways marketing to really make sure that that's at the top of the priority and understanding list of the households who are engaged in incremental finance, incremental housing, and incremental finance. So that's one of the obvious things. Later on, as we look for solutions with the financial institutions, there and microfinance, there may be some possibilities for working together there as well. But that's the starting point, and then also learning together in areas like rainwater capture, where we can see solutions, but the solutions still look pretty expensive right now for low-income houses. For households. And so finding, to see if we can find solutions that are more efficient are going to matter a lot. I also am thinking a lot about possible collaboration and looking for solutions with SM as well. The tapping on their expertise in working with LGUs to bring solutions, making sure that the water service and water utility is very much a part of the mix there, and also finding the right approaches so that wastewater and sanitation becomes a viable business for whether it's local government units or even private providers in some cases. And that's an area where we don't have a good solution, I think, for much of the market right now. So these are, and I could keep going. There are lots more, but I will stop there.
Well, we're very happy to hear all your thoughts, your insights on that. Jitendra, would you want to add to that, or has Don captured most of it?
No, I think Don has very rightly captured the shared interests that two organizations have. In fact, GAY also knows we are already working at a global level to forge a partnership where these two organizations can come together and align their work and the interest. Often we work with the same partners in the local market, so I think it makes sense to synergize our efforts. And look at this, sustainability from a combined lens.
Great. Sorry, yes, Lisa, you would like to add? Yes, please do.
Yeah,
Yes.
with SM, we are open to solutions, and we are always after technology innovations. Especially on the water, coming water crisis, we really want to prepare.
Great. I'd have to admit also, while I may have ceded that question to you, Lisa, but it's also on the side. I work for a bank, obviously. I'm from Cebuana Lulier Bank, and we're also trying to develop and improve our sustainable finance programs, and I'm actually getting pointers from everyone here on how we can improve that. So we can be part of to really bring this advocacy at the forefront. Don, I just wanted to ask also, especially with the pandemic and your plans earlier that you said that you are trying to reach the last mile. I think this goes for Jitendra also. With the effects of the pandemic, are households giving less priority to water and sanitation given the economic challenges caused by the pandemic?
No, rather the opposite. Households, from early on, realized the importance of water in acting as one of the ways they could help prevent the possibility of infection and spread. So that the hygiene aspect of water access has become more important and more clear to households. And so we have seen, there has certainly been impact on households' ability, in some cases, households' ability to pay their water bills. But in practice, we have seen less impact than we would have expected in most cases, because households see the value of that. And so for low-income households, that value of safe water has just become more clear during the pandemic.
Yes, I would think, especially now, they really know the value of sanitation right now. Okay, I think this would be probably, unless there are questions that are going to be placed in the chat box, maybe we can, I can have this last question, and I'll ask probably each one to give their final thoughts. But maybe this is quite something that I think how we can involve the youth. I think especially now, and this one we've also experienced this actually with hiring, and millennials right now really prefer to work with institutions that have their own advocacy. You know, they're okay not getting the top salary as long as they know that, you know, a particular the institution that that they're working for is working for a higher cause. So maybe do you have any volunteer or intern programs in your respective organizations? Maybe Alberto, I could throw this question to you first. I'm sure Red Cross would have that, but would you like to share?
Absolutely. So volunteers is a key component of the Red Cross, Red Crescent actions and strategy. So it's in our soul and it's part of our DNA. But one of the things that has happened during this pandemic is that the capacity of youth to be engaged in any type of relevant activity has declined, probably because they were not able to be, because there's a work behind that needs to be done by the organizations to raise awareness, because the interest and since, you know, situation of lockdown where people cannot move, it's a little bit difficult. I mean, to keep this interest on this on youth. So we are reactivating this program now. But I think you mentioned something important, and the thing here is for us, participation of youth is about solidarity, and again, it's about appropriation, and it's about willingness to give to your own population. So that is what this is about, and it's a culture. It's a culture of giving to others. Concept of retribution towards volunteerism is opposite. So we try to avoid this type of confusion, because sometimes we have people coming to us and asking for a volunteer. A volunteer is someone who can give something to others for free. That's the concept, and we want to keep this concept alive. The thing here is that we need now to reactivate this interest from youth to be more involved, because during these 2 years there's been a kind of frozen, let's say, momentum. No, so that is something that we need to reactivate. But at the same time, I see a great opportunity in youth being back to raising this interest and providing time to others. I mean, it's just a matter of having the appropriate atmosphere that allows, you know, reactivating this program and having this youth back to action. So youth and volunteering is something super important, something that we need to build for the next generations. That is sustainable, that is reliable, and that is the way forward. So absolutely something super important for the Red Cross Red Crescent movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. How about you, Lisa? What are your initiatives on this?
Yes, so actually, you're very right. No, we really need to start thinking on how to embrace this huge youth population, especially in the corporate world, you know. And it's really very true that they wouldn't mind on the salaries at times, you know. They would just ask, what are your programs on CSRs and sustainability? So their serious impact, they have to be engaged in the development programs, and they will always look at their meaning, you know, their meaning and their impact on a part of their personal development and empowerment, the ability that we give to the youth. In SM, the volunteerism is open, no? It's open to the youth. One of our CSR program is focused on youth. So we have volunteerism on that, and we create different activities as part of our CSR focus on the youth itself. We have 5 strong CSRs in our company, focus on environment, women and breastfeeding, persons with disabilities, and the youth, and most especially. But internally in our company, we also are really trying to look at how we can get some volunteers, do some programs. That's part of our future planning.
Thank you, Lisa. What about you, Jitendra? How do you think we can encourage the youth to really focus or give importance to our advocacies?
No, indeed. See, this has been the bread and butter for Habitat for Humanity. So we have three models of operation. One is the community impact, where we build houses for the poor people directly. The second operational model that we have is to work with the private sector, because we know that governments alone and NGOs alone cannot meet this requirement. Our third important pillar is to build the societal impact, and that is where we rely on volunteerism, and they have been the backbone of Habitat for Humanity, bringing so much brand recognition across all the countries, and that will continue to be our important pillars. Yeah.
Thank you. What about you, Don?
Organizing volunteers and interns has not been a strong aspect of our program. We were just beginning to think about how to utilize volunteers prior to the pandemic, and this is something that we will pick up again. We do see, and in other countries, volunteers are a key part of the water solution, particularly at the village level, where you see village scale water service providers that are largely volunteer run, and that's something that we want to find ways to elevate and to recognize, because those kinds of traditional volunteer activities are not what people think of when they're thinking about interning or volunteering. And yet there are people who work for years for the good of their community, doing things like keeping a small water service network running, so that largely on a volunteer basis, so that local water rates don't go too high. And those contributions need to be recognized. We need to find a way to make sure that that is seen as something not just traditional, but that has a place in the modern world as well.
Thank you, Don. Okay, I think there's one last question. Maybe I can just probably get a couple of insights here. The question is, what must be done with challenges to climate adaptation efforts? For example, renewable energy investments, such as bureaucratic red tape or tight regulations in a country. Maybe there are success stories about how organizations have overcome these challenges. So yeah, this is open. Maybe I can hear a couple of insights from the panelists.
So, Dennis, I can take the first step,
Sure.
and then other
Sure.
colleagues can join in. So one of the things which is very much required for the sector is unlocking of the capital, right? So we need capital access from development finance institutions, from the multilaterals, from the local commercial banks, so that the private sector and the government can invest in this sector. For renewable energy, when the innovation took place, people were really doubting on it, right? And how it achieved a critical scale because of the multilateral agencies which came in and provided the blended finance facility. So by acting, by providing the credit guarantees. So we need such solutions so that people feel confident about investments in such subsectors, and then we can achieve the significant scale that we want. So even although renewable energy has already achieved its maturity scale, the pricing has come down, but let's say for any country, let's say pick up any country from the Africa region, they are still undergoing through that pathway. For them, it is still an innovation, although we have already achieved the business viability of renewable energy solution in other countries. But for African country, this is still an innovation. And that is where, we need these stakeholders to work together and provide such innovative financing instruments where we feel confident to invest in these technologies.
Thank you, Jitendra, for that. Anyone wants to add add on to this?
I think from from the private sector, we are willing to invest. I know that the private sectors are almost open and will have this capital to invest on things. But I think with the government regulations, we are looking for some incentives, and maybe if they incentivize some of these programs on green technologies and renewable energies, or lighten up the policies just to enhance and to have a come on for the private sector. The private sector will always find investment as good in their business.
Correct, which is actually one of the best practices. Those are the best practices that you see in other countries. It's really incentivizing the private sector or institutions, really dealing into green, sustainable programs. Yeah, thank you very much for your insights. So maybe just to wrap things up, maybe we could just hear a few words from everyone. I think Lisa, maybe since you started, maybe we can start with you first, then I'll just go around everyone that I see. Please, Lisa.
Okay, so engage the private sector in sustainable development. We are an essential partner of the government. We are here, we're just waiting for the right project. We know the challenges, and in the challenges, we can see opportunities, and we can even contribute to the economic growth. I agree to all the other speakers, on the systemic change, behavioral change, and a very good platform. Digitization and then the technology is also key, in this climate resilience and, changing world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Alberta, may we hear from you?
Thank you. So from the International Federation of the Red Cross Representative Society, thank you very much for the invitation and for the panelists. I think it was a good opportunity to hear other ideas, to have also the private sector here with us, other NGOs participating and brainstorming together. But I think it's also a great opportunity also to raise awareness towards the audience on the situation. And probably from my side and in my presentation, what I tried to explain is there's a problem, there's a solution, and we all need to act. And we cannot act in 50 years. We need to act now. So the message from my side is clear. We are together on this. We need to react together. And there's no time to spend in finding other solutions. We know how to confront the situation. There's the expertise that is already there. We have heard from our colleagues lots of ideas. I mean, I think it's a matter of organizing ourselves and being pragmatic. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Alberto. That's very loud and clear that we need to act now. Jitendra?
Sure. No, I would just add an extension to Lisa's statement. She mentioned about engaging the private sector. From my side, I would just advise that we need to create enabling environments and finding the right risk mitigation and incentive mechanizations for the private sector so that they feel motivated to work towards this problem. And once they have achieved an initial success, we are very confident that they will be able to replicate and scale such initial prototypes. Yeah.
Thank you, Jitendra. Don?
For me, one of the challenges that we face is not only successfully applying or supporting and enabling our partners to apply new technologies and new solutions, but making sure that those solutions actually solve the problem. That is, making sure that it actually results in improved access for low-income people. And this is where we can see the potential for digitization. We can see the potential for the identified improvements in renewable energy and in non-revenue water and wastewater treatment in other areas. The question is, are we going to implement that in a way that actually leads to wider service coverage, including more coverage, service coverage for low-income people. And that's the part that we miss sometimes, even as water.org. And so we're humble about that, and we keep it on the table to make sure that the solutions really solve the problem we want to solve.
Thank you, Don. I think it's pretty clear for everyone that I think we already know what to do. We have the technology to do things, and I think it's really not. And I think the everyone's insight really here is that this is not just one person, one institution, one's responsibility. This is really a collective effort, really, from everyone, from all stakeholders, to really sustain our development. I think especially for the Philippines, which is unfortunately a disaster prone area, and I think the initiatives of the different institutions right now hopefully would continue, and we can encourage more, especially the attendees that we have here right now. Maybe we can get more of their support in the near future. So anyway, thank you again to our panelists. It was very much a very interesting. I myself learned a lot of things today. I'd have to admit. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your expertise. So at this point, I'd like to call on Joe Metcalf, the Global Strategy Leader and Managing Director of GHD Foundation, for her short message and donation of GHD to Phoenix. Joe, thank you. You're on mute, I think.
Joe, you're on. I think you're on mute.
It seems like Joe is having some technical difficulties.
Dennis, let's give
Yes.
it a few minutes.
Sure. So, Gay, how did you find, the insights of our very esteemed panelists? It seems that there's really a lot of work to be done. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely, I think it's obvious what the solutions are. Again, it's just a matter of coming together. Especially today, I think you emphasized this during your opening, that everything is aggravated by the circumstances of the pandemic. And it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. The more we're challenged, maybe climate change, other catastrophes, water crisis, anything, I mean, the more inequalities exist. So which means it cannot be a one-size-fits-all solution. It has to be a contextualized solution. It's a different solution from one who was excluded as a result of the pandemic to one that's really struggling to be part of the financial system before the pandemic. So very meaningful discussion. I'm very grateful, Dennis, for your moderation. You're able to really flesh out the key messages. Appreciate that. And I hope this is the start of more activities with you as a member of Financial Inclusion Committee. I don't know if Joe will be able to make it to sign in. Any message from our technical group? Rafi? We lost her. Maybe we can try to switch things around and play the message from our director, liaison director, and then we try to get back to you. Yes, Joey, over to you,
Thank
please.
you. We're having
Thank you, Dennis.
I
Thank
think
you.
Ms. Metcalf is having some technical difficulties, so thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you, Gay. To wrap up and end our program, may I call on our liaison director for the Financial Inclusion Committee and PNB's board advisor, Ms. Flor Tariela.
Good afternoon. In closing, thank you to all our participants for joining us today in this Phoenix first webinar for 2022 of the Financial Inclusion Committee, Effecting Positive Change Through Inclusion and Focus on Critical Sustainable Goals. I would like to thank especially our keynote speaker, NEDA Undersecretary Mercedita Sombilia, and our panelists, Mr. Jitendra Balani of Habitat for Humanity. He talked about inclusive housing markets for post-disaster recovery. Mr. Dom Johnston of Water.org Indonesia. Water is a very critical resource and very important for sustainability. Mr. Alberto Boganegre of the International Federation of the Red Cross. He talked about the current situation, especially with recent Odette. And Ms. Liza Celerio of SM Supermalls and Arise. Thank you to our moderator, Mr. Dennis Valdez of Cebuana Lulier Bank, and our able MC, Jose Camus, the Financial Inclusion Committee Vice Chair. This webinar would not have been possible without our very active chairman of the Financial Inclusion Committee, Gay Santos, strongly supported by our Secretariat led by Mike Benluan with Lynn Vizcaya and Mylene Baniged. Thank you once again. And I do hope we realize the urgency and that we can all make an effective change through inclusion and to focus on critical sustainable goals. Thank you, Godspeed, and mabuhay.
Thank you, Flor, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to take this opportunity also to thank Joe Metcalf and the GHD Foundation for their donation to Phoenix. I'd also like to ask the panelists to stay for the final photo, a quick final photo. Thank you again to our speaker and our panelists and moderators. This is the end of the program.
Thank you very much.
Please stay for the photo.
So, yes.
No po, ready po. I'll take the photo. Pa-open lang po ng video. Okay po. Ready, ma'am? Sir. 1, 2, smile.
Lynn, hold on, Lynn. Hold on, Lynn.
Ay, sorry, sir.
Wait lang. Let me drop off.
Picture pala po.
Right there.
Ay, sorry po. Ready? 1, 2, smile. Hey po, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Grateful for your time. We'll be in touch. Take care, everyone. Bye, Albert. Bye, Dennis.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Camus.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Dennis. Bye, Joey.
Bye, Mike.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Secretariat. Thank you, Secretariat.
Dennis, thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Rapi, Mai. Bye-bye.
Thank you po. Bye-bye.
Ay, live pa rin, ah. Thank you, Mike V. Mylene. Bye, Lynn.
Bye po.